For many years, Foster's has been an underachiever on the Australian share market, despite being the nation's dominant brewer. But almost as soon as the company split its beer and wine divisions, the world's second biggest brewer, SABMiller, came a-knocking, wanting to talk about a takeover. I spoke to Foster's chief executive, John Pollaers, who's been running the beer business for 18 months, about how he plans to secure the company's future. Well, John Pollaers, I guess one of the reasons for the demerger of the beer and wine businesses was to encourage a takeover offer, so no surprise that you got one. But you must have been a bit disappointed, and the board must have been disappointed that it came in as a low-ball offer to begin with.
Alan, I think there certainly was no intention at all in demerging the company to set it up for a takeover.
That's what everyone said at the time.
They may have said it, but I can tell you, having been recruited into the company to support the separation, it really has been around bringing the company back to its fundamental, which is a focus on beer. And we believe that we can create much greater value in a focused beer business than through any other mechanism.
Right. So, OK, well, let's just talk about the takeover offer. It's been rejected out of hand and you're not engaging with them. Is that correct?
That is correct, yeah. Our focus right now, Alan, is just fundamentally turning this business around and making sure that we realise the full potential of it.
So what do you expect SABMiller to do? I mean, are they going to? Is there any suggestion they're going to come back, make a higher offer? I mean, they're unlikely to bid against themselves, are they?
Look, I think ultimately that's a question for SABMiller. From our perspective, there's always been noise around this company, and why wouldn't there be? It's a very strong company, a very strong market position, with a very strong international reputation. But as I said, our focus is let SABMiller do what they need to do. Our focus is on developing this business.
So you definitely weren't setting it up for sale. It definitely was not being set up as
Absolutely
a business
not.
to sell. And your focus is entirely on running the business for the future.
Yeah, absolutely, doing the right thing by the business, the right thing by our shareholders, and frankly, unlocking the real potential of this business that for some time has been distracted and now is very focused on rebuilding its position.
Because I think your shareholders are pretty keen on getting an auction going, if they can.
Oh, I'm not sure that's true. I think at the end of the day, they recognise that our job is to maximise value for them. The best way to maximise value is to have a well-run company that's unlocking the growth potential and is relevant to consumers. That's where I think their vote will be.
So tell us about how you're going to do that. Declining, I mean, beer consumption per capita has been declining since 1970, still declining. So what's the plan?
Well, the beer market itself has actually been a lot better performing than that. For the last 15 to 20 years, the beer market has been flat to marginal growth. We've had a very tough year this year, and I think most Australians are feeling it tough, and most beer consumers are feeling it tough. But fundamentally, we see the beer categories continuing to grow. And when you look at it, there's never been a more exciting time in beer. We've got fast-growing craft, fast-growing international and domestic premium, new-style regular beers. It's almost like innovation has come to the beer category.
Well, yeah, but one impact of that is that it's fragmenting. There's lots of brands, lots of different brands coming up, so that it's turning into a bit like the wine business, where there's lots of different brands, and which perhaps leads to loss of market share for the big players.
Well, we still have a strong 50% share of the Australian market and an enviable market share position in every one of those sub-segments, from craft right through to mainstream beer. I'm not concerned about fragmentation insofar as we have to keep relevant to changing consumer needs and tastes. Sure, that brings some complexity in managing a larger portfolio, but that is the nature of disciplined consumer goods companies.
So that's what you have to do, is have a larger portfolio of brands, is that correct?
You have to be more targeted to the individual, opportunities with consumers. I don't think that means that our portfolio will grow much bigger than it is today, but it certainly means that over time some brands will grow stronger and some brands we will be replacing with new brands as we create them.
I think you've held market share over the past 12 months since you've been in the job. Has that been at the cost of margin? No.
What we've seen this year has been an increase in the amount of product going through on promotion, which is a function of the economic cycle in Australia. No, in fact, we've taken a very focused look at how we continue to benefit from the trend of premiumisation in Australia, while making sure at a value level we're well covered as well.
But realistically, don't you have to run the company for cash rather than growth? Isn't that fundamentally, growth is kind of fine if you can achieve it, but really what it's about is cash flow.
Well, I don't think any well-run business looks at just one line of the P&L. We have to be focused on top-line growth because ultimately that's the measure of whether you're succeeding in the marketplace. And as you've seen with CUB for many years, it's had a very disciplined cost focus. It's one of the most profitable beer companies in the world and certainly in Australia. So our focus is also on bottom line. And you'd find few companies with the kind of cash generation that we've produced over the years and continue to do so as well. So I think you really have to be focused on all three of those lines.
And what is your free cash flow?
Well, I won't disclose any numbers today, but our cash flow conversion has been up around 100% for a very long time.
In fact, I think you've got the biggest profit margin of any brewer in the world, haven't you?
Pretty well. If not number one, we'd be right up there.
In the context of the takeover offer you've received, are you talking to shareholders now about what you're going to do for the future? And in particular, are you telling them what you expect to be doing by way of dividend?
I laid out, when I first arrived here, the plan for turning around this business. And effectively, year one was all about being very focused on execution, building the capability in the company and getting the positioning of the brands right. And we have been talking to our shareholders, again through that period, about our second phase, which is all about, continuing that focus on execution, making sure we get cost out, that we reinvest in our brands and we extend our leadership position. So there are no surprises and no changes.
So what's the big difference between phase one and phase two?
And effectively, phase one was all about getting the capability right. We've replaced nearly 70% of our senior sales and marketing leadership teams. We've got very clear around the kinds of standards of execution at an outlet level. We've changed our trading terms to make them performance-based. And we've got the fundamental positioning of our brands right.
And you gave the retailers a punch in the nose too, didn't you?
Well, I think we stood up for our brands. We said that if we're going to have a long history, as we have, with brands that have a very strong heritage, we've got to protect them and do the right thing by them. To your question, though, phase two now is being very clear, get the investment rates up in our brands, start to expand the levels of innovation around them, get the category strategies right, and get the cost out to fund that.
Obviously, John Elliott was going to fosterise the world. Are you thinking of making overseas expansions within the beer business?
Look, I think our focus, Alan, is very much on our core business, which is beer. What people probably don't understand is that we've got strong distribution in 45 countries around the world and an opportunity for good organic growth. And I expect that business to make a bigger contribution to our overall performance. But it'll be organic, and it'll be focusing on the fundamentals of execution and the fundamentals in those relationships in each market.
No acquisitions?
No acquisitions.
So which of your most important brands is Corona is the biggest selling international brand in the market here. Are you going to try to grow that more than it has grown in recent years?
Well, we've got 7 of the top 10 brands in Australia, and we've got 3 of the fastest 4 growing brands. So you'd have to go a long way to get behind, away from VB as, a much loved and important brand for us.
But all the growth has been in the international brands and the craft brands.
Well, not quite so. Carlton Draft, which is our number 2 brand in the company, has grown now consistently for 10 years. So it's has been the fastest growing regular beer brand, and in volume terms it outstrips those by a long way. International premium has been important. Corona is a very important brand for us. We've been distributing it for 20 years and we continue to get great growth from it. But our craft business, Matilda Bay Fat Yak, is the fastest growing craft brand in the country. So, I often liken a portfolio to a family. You've got to find enough love to share between all of the kids, make sure they all grow and therefore got the capacity for growth, without neglecting any one of them. And for us, there's about 7 brands that we would really give that attention to.
Thanks for joining us, John Pollaers.
Thanks very much, Alan.